Hi, I'm Maella, and if you've ever been betrayed by the people who swore they'd protect you, maybe you'll understand. At dinner, just a regular Sunday dinner, I got a text. No name, no emojis, just, leave now, don't drink. I didn't listen fast enough. Mom smiled as she served my favorite juice. Dad refilled my glass twice. My sister raised a toast, and later they lifted my hand while I pretended to sleep to unlock my phone, and that's when I knew. This wasn't just manipulation, it was a strategy. But why would your own family treat you like an ATM? What happens when you finally catch them in the act and record every word? Would you turn them in? Would you walk away? Would you survive it? It had been nearly 6 months since I last walked up the porch steps of my childhood home, but nothing had changed. Not the creaky third step, not the wind chime Vera had hung near the door back in '98, not even the faint smell of cinnamon and pine sol that clung to the entryway like a memory. Weathersfield hadn't changed much either. It was late fall, the sun barely grazing the horizon by 5:30, and the trees lining the sidewalks had already given up their leaves. I paused at the front door, bracing myself, then rang the bell, even though I knew it was unnecessary. Vera opened it with that same half-smile she always wore when she wanted to appear warm. "You made it," she said softly, stepping aside. "Would have been rude not to," I replied, managing a polite smile. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. The living room looked exactly like I remembered: lace curtains, outdated photo frames, and a large mirror that hung just slightly crooked. Cassian stood in the doorway between the kitchen and dining room, arms crossed, nodding like we were business associates rather than father and daughter. Seraphine? She was already perched at the table, perfect as always, hair curled just right, lipstick never too much, scrolled casually through her phone with a finger adorned in more rings than fingers. "You're late," she muttered without looking up. "Traffic," I lied. The dining table was already set. Candles flickered in the center, casting soft shadows across the old wood. My chair had been pulled out for me. The place setting was exact: silver fork, white napkin, and a glass of cranberry juice already filled. "Still like cranberry, right?" Vera asked from behind me. "Sure," I said. I hadn't touched the stuff in years, but it wasn't the time to start an argument over juice. I slid into my seat, watching the way Seraphine glanced up from her screen just long enough to register my presence, then immediately looked away. Cassian poured himself a splash of wine and offered none to me. Habit, probably, or intention. It was hard to tell with him. "So," Vera began, "how's work?" "Busy. Good, though," I replied. I had this part down. Say just enough, smile, and deflect. "That tech job still holding up?" Cassian asked, eyes narrowed. "Still holding." Seraphine giggled softly. "I saw a TikTok that said tech jobs are the new pyramid schemes. You better cash out before they collapse." I smiled. Didn't respond. It wasn't worth it. Not anymore. We were halfway through passing the mashed potatoes when my phone buzzed in my lap. I wasn't expecting anything. No one texted me during family dinners. I glanced at the screen beneath the table, thumb grazing the corner of my phone. A message. Just 2 lines. "Leave now. Don't drink." There was no name, no emojis, no punctuation beyond that final period. It felt like a voice in my head trying to sound calm when it was actually screaming. I swallowed carefully. My hands were steady, but I felt a drop in my stomach, a cold, sudden drop. I looked up. Vera was pouring gravy over chicken, Cassian buttering a roll, Seraphine still scrolling. Everything looked completely normal. Too normal. I glanced at my glass of cranberry juice, deep red, with a couple of small bubbles near the top, the kind I used to drink when I was 13, watching Saturday cartoons before chores. I didn't remember anyone asking what I wanted to drink. It was just there. "You still like cranberry, right?" Vera asked again, as if repeating it would make it true. "Yeah," I said. My voice felt far away. My pulse kicked up. I reached for the glass, lifted it an inch, then set it back down. This was either the most twisted prank, or something was very wrong. Seraphine raised her own glass. "To family," she said, smiling like a woman in a shampoo commercial. "Always there when you need them." Cassian lifted his To strength. Vera's smile widened. To unity. I raised mine slowly, carefully, and clinked it against theirs. But I didn't drink. I watched the way their eyes flicked to my hand, then back, the way Vera's smile didn't reach her eyes, the way Seraphine blinked just once too slowly. Something was off. I turned to Vera. Bathroom? Same place as it's always been, she replied, tone just sweet enough to taste sour. I pushed back from the table, stood, and walked upstairs. Each step felt heavier than the last. By the time I reached the top, my hands were shaking, not with fear, but with certainty. In the hallway, I passed the old photo wall. Me and Seraphine in matching sweaters, my high school graduation, Dad's retirement party. All framed, all staged. I stepped into the upstairs bathroom and shut the door behind me. Locked it. Stared at myself in the mirror. There was a time when I would have laughed at a text like that. A time I would have rolled my eyes and drank the juice anyway. But not tonight. Not after the things I'd started to piece together over the past year. The time my bank alerted me of a login I didn't make. The birthday gift that mysteriously never arrived, though Seraphine swore she mailed it. The weird way Vera asked for my new passcode, just in case something happened. I pulled out my phone again. Reread the message. Leave now. Don't drink. And I knew, deep in my gut, in the place that always knew before I let it rise to the surface, I knew exactly who had sent that text. The lock clicked into place with a soft, deliberate sound. I took a breath, slow and shaky, and leaned my back against the bathroom door, giving myself a moment before I moved. The message was still on the screen. I didn't need to read it again. I already knew what it said. I also knew who sent it. The moment I saw the wording, short and sharp like a command whispered through clenched teeth, I had no doubt. Iran. It had been years since I last dialed his number. I'd deleted him from my contacts after our breakup, more for show than necessity. His number lived in my memory like a song you didn't ask to remember, but couldn't forget. I tapped call before I could second-guess myself. My hand trembled as I held the phone to my ear. 1 ring. 2. A soft click. You're still there? His voice was quieter than I remembered, raspier maybe, but I recognized it instantly. Aaron, I whispered. A pause. Maella. The weight in his voice was real, familiar, but heavier. Neither of us asked how the other had been. There wasn't time. And frankly, this wasn't about us. You need to get out of that house. Do not drink anything. Don't sleep. Don't trust them. My pulse jumped. Why? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Aaron exhaled, the sound tight, almost pained. I should have told you earlier. Back when we were still together, I didn't know how to say it. Say what? He hesitated again, and I could feel him battling something. Shame? Regret? Anger? Your mom, Vera. She installed tracking software on my phone. I didn't move. I barely breathed. What? It was during the holidays. She said it was a safety precaution. I believed her. Your dad once asked me if I'd ever considered joint accounts. Said it was a sign of commitment. And Seraphine, she wanted to test a banking app on my device. Said she didn't want to mess up her phone. Every word came with a new throb in my temples. You never told me. I was stupid, he said. I thought they were just being overprotective. I figured it was just their way of showing love, in that twisted, suffocating kind of way. But then I started seeing logins I didn't make. Notifications disappeared. Transactions I didn't recognize. When we split, I assumed it was over. But a few weeks ago, I overheard something. What did you hear? Someone I know. She works in security at a bank. Seraphine came in, used a business account that wasn't hers. She was trying to recover access to someone's login. She used your name. My knees buckled slightly, and I sank to the edge of the bathtub, phone pressed to my ear like it could hold me upright. Aaron, I whispered. Are you sure? Yes. That message I sent, it wasn't just a hunch. I pressed my free hand to my forehead. My skin was cold, clammy. The cranberry juice I hadn't touched felt like it was already poisoning me from a distance. They're planning something, Mayella. I don't know what, but I know that look. I know how it starts. They smile too much, say all the right things. But everything around you, every moment, it's manufactured. My voice cracked as I asked, "You think they're trying to access my bank?" "I think they're trying to control you again." "And if they can't control you while you're awake, they'll find a way while you're not." The words stung, not because they were harsh, but because they fit too well. "Thank you," I said. He didn't ask for anything in return, didn't apologize. He just said, "Be careful," and hung up. I stared at the wall for a moment before opening my notes app. I started typing. Time, 5:58 p.m. Text received. Warning confirmed. Then I wrote down what everyone had said, word for word, as best I could remember. "You still like cranberry, right? Remember when you used to fall asleep at dinner?" To family. Every sentence now felt like a trigger. I kept typing. Then I stood, washed my face with cold water, and looked at my reflection. My hair was pinned back neatly, my eyes focused, not frantic, but underneath the surface, I could feel it. Something was shifting. There was a time, not long ago, when I would have gaslighted myself, told myself I was being dramatic, accused myself of always assuming the worst, but not anymore. Too many patterns, too many slips. Like the time in college when my phone kept dying, even though it was at 40%. Or the time my Venmo showed payments to someone I didn't recognize, only for them to magically refund it after I mentioned it aloud at dinner. Or when my tax return vanished from my account for 48 hours and reappeared with a transfer reversal I never authorized. Little things, dismissible things. But now, strung together, they painted a clear picture, a deliberate one. My chest tightened, not from fear, but from clarity. They've done this before, to me. I opened the camera app, took a picture of my reflection, just for myself, just to document the moment before everything changed. Then I saved the note, backed it up to cloud storage, and tucked my phone into my jacket pocket. I wasn't going to cry, not here, not now. If they tried anything tonight, I'd be ready. I'd already been through the emotional ambush. I wasn't letting them get a second swing. I took one more breath. Adjusted my posture, straightened the line of my coat, then I unlocked the bathroom door and stepped into the hallway. Each step down the stairs was slower than the one before. My hand grazed the wooden railing, familiar and worn. I heard Seraphine laughing softly. Cassian's voice floated up, low, smooth. Vera was humming again, probably plating dessert like she hadn't just engineered a digital crime scene. As I approached the dining room, I felt the eyes before I saw the faces. They turned. Smiles. Innocent. Casual. But I'd already seen beneath the skin. I pulled out my chair, lifted the glass of cranberry juice, smiled, and then I raised my glass toward Seraphine. "Cheers," I said, voice even, "to family." Her eyes searched mine. I didn't blink. The glass never touched my lips. I smiled at Seraphine, held it up like a silent toast, and set it gently back down. I didn't need to drink to play the part. I just needed to watch, listen, and remember. Conversation floated around the table like it was riding on strings, light, casual, perfectly composed. It was too smooth. The kind of smooth that took rehearsal. Cassian made some offhand remark about potholes in town. Vera chimed in about the neighbor's kid getting a scholarship. Seraphine giggled when Cassian mispronounced quinoa, like this was just a normal dinner, not a trap. I answered questions with brief, polished replies, smiled when appropriate, nodded in rhythm. But underneath, every part of me was working, scanning every word, every twitch, every shift in tone. I wasn't just present, I was documenting. Vera turned to me mid-bite, her fork paused delicately in the air. "You've always been so sensitive to alcohol, haven't you, sweetheart?" She said it like it was trivia, like we were flipping through old stories, warming ourselves by nostalgia. My stomach tightened, but I didn't flinch. Cassian jumped in with a chuckle. Remember that holiday party? What was it, sophomore year? You had half a beer and passed out in the laundry room. Seraphine leaned in, resting her chin on her hand. You sure you're okay to drink tonight? The way she asked, it was laced with sugar. But I tasted metal. This wasn't conversation. It was construction. They were laying bricks for a narrative. Maella is fragile. Maella is careless. Maella passes out when she drinks. And if something happened tonight, they'd just point back to this dinner. She always had a low tolerance. Remember college? We were worried about her. I let the comments hang in the air, not pushing back, not validating, just listening. But inside, I was flashing back. 2 years ago. Christmas week. I'd flown in late, and Vera had insisted I come to dinner, even if I was tired. She poured me a glass of red wine, one. That was all I had. We'd talked about Seraphine's job, Cassian's new lawnmower. It all blurred now. But I remember waking up the next morning in my childhood bedroom, fully dressed, my phone dead, no recollection of getting there. At the time, I chalked it up to exhaustion, jet lag, stress. But a week later, I'd noticed a $2,000 wire transfer to a consultant I didn't remember hiring. I'd assumed it was some app glitch. I even filed a dispute, but it got reversed. Authorized by fingerprint. No investigation, no follow-up. I let it go. Now, sitting here, with this same cranberry juice staring at me like a dare, I realized I hadn't passed out. I'd been put down, just like they were trying to do now. Same setup, same lighting, same music humming from the Bluetooth speaker. Vera never knew how to work until Seraphine helped her set it up. This wasn't improvisation, this was protocol. I slid my hand discreetly under the table, texting myself. 6:41 p.m., cranberry poured before arrival. 6:43 p.m., low alcohol tolerance comment from Vera. 6:45 p.m., reinforcement from Cassian, follow-up by Seraphine. I snapped a photo of the table, my untouched glass, the angle of the chairs, the untouched dessert plates. If they were trying to bury me again, I'd leave footprints all over their polished wood floors. I glanced across the table, caught Seraphine looking at me. She smiled. Just her mouth, not her eyes. Hey, remember that time we got locked out of the house and you cried for like an hour? She said. Suddenly. Vera gave a maternal sigh. She's always been the emotional one. Cassian didn't speak. He rarely did, unless it served a purpose. That silence of his wasn't ignorance, it was strategy. I kept my expression neutral, but my mind was racing. The venom in their words wasn't even about tonight, it was about rewriting my history in front of me. So when they pulled the final trigger, no one would suspect a thing, not the police, not the neighbors, not even my own brain, if I'd been knocked out again. They'd say I was always this way, fragile, overworked, dramatic. The tragedy is, I'd believed them before, but not anymore. I pretended to check my phone again. Just a glance at the time, it gave me cover. I tapped open my notes again, documented every sentence, tucked the phone into my jacket pocket, screen recording still running in the background. Seraphine raised her glass, smiled that rehearsed smile and said, "To sisters, old memories and new beginnings." Everyone echoed the sentiment like they'd all practiced it. I clinked my glass against hers, leaned slightly forward, and whispered just loud enough for her to hear. Here's to endings they never saw coming. The toast lingered in the air for a second too long, like smoke that didn't quite know where to drift. I could feel Seraphine's eyes on me as I set my glass down again, untouched, same as before. The smile I wore stayed on my face, but it had grown tighter at the corners. I hadn't planned to make that final line sting, but when it left my lips, I didn't regret it. The moment passed and laughter resumed, albeit slightly more brittle than before. Dessert arrived, a tray of small lemon bars and chocolate mousse in plastic ramekins Vera insisted were just as good as the glass ones. As she placed a dish in front of me, I felt a tug at the hem of my sleeve. "Hey, Auntie Maella," came a small, eager voice. I turned. Seraphine's daughter, Chloe, 6 years old and entirely too observant, stood next to me, crumbs already dotting the corner of her mouth. "Mommy said you fall asleep fast," she whispered with the sweet conviction only children possess. "Like last time, when Grandpa had to get your phone 'cause you were too sleepy." A pin dropped. That's what it felt like. The room didn't stop outright, but it paused, just for a breath. Vera's hand gripped the tray a little tighter. Cassian coughed into his napkin. Seraphine's face froze before she forced a light chuckle. "Chloe, honey, go get your book from the sofa," she said in that sing-song tone meant to redirect a child before they blew up a carefully laid plan. Chloe blinked. "But Now," Seraphine said more firmly. The little girl trotted off, confused but obedient. "I didn't look at anyone. I didn't need to. That was all I needed to hear." So this wasn't the first time. Of course it wasn't. And they hadn't just done it to me. They'd talked about it, normalized it enough that a 6-year-old could repeat the script. They taught her the lines. The bitterness in my mouth had nothing to do with the dessert. I picked up the spoon, stirred the mousse without tasting it, and let my thoughts sharpen. Later, as I took a short walk to the kitchen for water, I paused by the doorway. Voices carried easily in this house, especially the ones not meant for me. "She thinks she's better than us now," Seraphine said in a sharp whisper. "I know," Vera murmured as she stirred something, a ceramic spoon clinking against the mug. "Just let her feel smart. She always thinks she's above this family because of that office job." "Let's see how smug she is when we're done tonight," Seraphine added, tone coated with syrupy disdain. I didn't step into the room. I didn't interrupt. I slid my phone out from my pocket, pressed record, and angled the mic just around the corner. My fingers didn't tremble this time. When I had enough, I walked back into the dining room and smiled like I hadn't just heard my own sister planning a personal dismantling. So it wasn't just about money, it was about control, erasure, humiliation, maybe even revenge for something I couldn't pinpoint. Childhood jealousy, misplaced rage, a script where I refused to play the dumb, grateful sibling. Whatever it was, it had teeth. Back at the table, the mood had shifted again, forced joy over awkward tension. Seraphine was scrolling through her phone, pretending not to be rattled. Cassian sipped coffee like it could shield him from judgment. Vera acted like she hadn't been stirring poison into a plan minutes ago. I played along, laughed at a joke Cassian half told, asked Vera about the garden I knew she hadn't touched in months. I kept everything on the surface. But below it, I was drawing lines. Drawing blood. Quietly. When I finally caught Seraphine stepping away from the table to answer a work call in the hallway, I followed. Not immediately. I let a few minutes pass, then slid into the hallway like I was just going to the restroom. She was standing near the console table, eyes glued to her phone. "You got a second?" I asked, voice calm. She looked up. "Sure." I stepped a little closer, not confrontational, just enough. "I don't know what you're planning tonight," I said, keeping my tone even. "But I want to make something really clear. If you cross a line, I won't be the one who forgets." Seraphine tilted her head, smile twitching. "Still so dramatic, Mayella." "Maybe, but at least I've learned how to spot an ambush before I'm under the table." Her eyes narrowed just slightly. I added, "Let's see who writes the final scene." Then I turned and walked away. I didn't wait for her to reply. I knew that smile of hers would return the second I turned my back, the one she wore whenever she thought she still had the upper hand. From the kitchen, I heard Vera call out, "Dessert's ready!" As I walked toward the dining room, Cassian was already refilling my glass. I watched the liquid swirl in the cup, thick and slow, same as before. They just smiled, as if my warning was a bedtime story, something nice to ignore before taking what they wanted. Cassian refilled my glass without looking at me, and Vera set down the apple pie with that same rehearsed warmth she'd worn all evening. The aroma should have triggered comfort, flaky crust, cinnamon, butter, but it didn't land like it used to, not tonight. I watched her hands as she served each slice, calm, meticulous, too calm, too careful. They were choreographing my fall, down to the garnish. "Your favorite," Vera said, smiling as she slid the plate in front of me. Thank you, I replied. My voice was smooth, controlled. I matched their act note for note. Across the table, Seraphine raised her phone. Let's take a picture, she said, lifting it up with practiced ease. One for the group chat. I gave a light laugh, the kind that passed for agreement without true enthusiasm. We all leaned in. Cassian placed a hand lightly on my shoulder. Vera adjusted her scarf. Seraphine held the camera high and counted down like we were kids again. 3 clicks later, she smiled at her phone, tapped a few buttons. Sending it now, she said. Don't worry, Myella, I'll find your best angle. I didn't respond. I knew exactly what that group chat was now. After a few minutes of fake laughs and polite bites of dessert, I excused myself. Phone's dead, I said casually, holding up my screen. I need a charger. Is the study still open? Of course, Vera said, too quickly. Same drawer as always. I walked down the hallway to the room that had once been Cassian's office, now a half-used storage space for tax folders and the dusty home printer. The lamp near the desk still had the yellowing shade I remembered. On the far end of the bookshelf, the old Google Nest Hub blinked faintly to life, and that's when I saw it. When I moved out, I never logged out of the family Nest account. I'd forgotten, honestly, until now. I tapped the screen. Inbox. Still synced. I opened the message history. Group thread. Family first. 3 participants. Vera, Cassian, Seraphine. My breath caught. Just remember to tilt the phone for the fingerprint. We missed it last time. Make sure she drinks at least half. She blacks out quick. Don't overdo it. Cass, charge the extra phone and keep it in your pocket just in case. I felt like I was watching a documentary about myself, except I was the unknowing subject. I tapped quickly. Screenshot, screenshot, scroll, screenshot. I forwarded the images to a hidden email I kept for legal purposes, logged out of the account, and hard reset the device so it would appear untouched. Then, I tucked the charger under my arm and walked back toward the dining room, slower than I needed to. I needed to center myself before stepping back into that theater. They didn't notice my absence, or at least, they pretended not to. That was the game, after all. If no one names the crime, no one is guilty. I set the charger on the end table, plugged in my phone, then slid back into my seat, composed. They hadn't counted on me being 2 steps ahead. They thought they were orchestrating this evening, but they forgot I'd been raised in their symphony. I knew every note, every pause. They trained me for this without realizing it. So, I said, folding my napkin, how's the new security system working out? Cassian raised an eyebrow. Fine. Why? Just curious, I said with a shrug. You know, with all the syncing and recording these days, things have a way of being remembered. Seraphine's hand twitched. Vera smiled, but her fork paused mid-air. I took another bite of pie, chewed slowly, then added, Funny how tech never forgets, even when we do. There it was. The flicker in Seraphine's eyes, the millisecond where she dropped the mask and something calculating darted behind her stare. She covered it well, but not fast enough. Cassian reached under the table to check his phone. Subtle, but I caught it. My phone was already recording audio through a background app. Anything said tonight, whispered or muttered, would be documented. They wanted to gaslight me. They wanted to recreate a version of me they could dismiss. But now the record would outlast the performance. I leaned back in my chair, glass in hand, and gave the room one last sweeping look. Vera cleared her throat. You haven't touched your drink, Myella. Oh, I will, I said lightly. Just waiting for the right moment. Don't let it get warm, Cassian added. It's better cold. I smiled. You'd know. And then, I clinked my glass against Vera's with a soft cheers. Still didn't drink. Seraphine was staring now. Not with warmth, not with guilt. With calculation. She knew I was onto them. And now, she had to guess how much I knew, and how fast she had to act. Cassian's phone buzzed again under the table. He silenced it quickly, almost too casually. I turned off my phone screen and slipped it face down beside my plate, letting the mic continue in silence. Let them think I was done resisting. Let them believe I was tired. Vera leaned toward Seraphine. Do it now, she whispered. too low for anyone else, but not low enough. I blinked slowly, feigned the heaviness of exhaustion. I think I'm just going to rest here for a moment, I murmured, my voice trailing off. Vera touched my shoulder gently. Of course, darling. You've had a long day. The lights felt dimmer, the air cooler. A hush settled over the room, like the last breath before a plunge. I eased into the armchair near the fireplace, eyes half-lidded, letting my head tilt slightly. My breathing slowed. I felt fingers curling around my hand, and then the phone vibrated once. The moment my phone vibrated in my palm, I knew the plan had worked. That tiny buzz, subtle, specific, was the confirmation I'd set days ago. The vibration meant one thing. The recording had begun uploading to my cloud storage. Quiet, seamless, undetectable. Just like everything else I'd prepared. I didn't flinch. I didn't move. My breathing stayed steady, chest rising and falling like someone on the edge of sleep. But my mind was racing, alive with every sound, every whisper in the room. A blanket was draped over me. Vera's hands were as gentle as ever. To anyone watching, she was just a mother tucking in her daughter. But I knew what was coming. She's out, Seraphine whispered. Her voice was clipped, almost bored. Let's get this done, Cassian replied from somewhere near my feet. Then came the sound, the soft swish of cloth, the faint click of my phone being picked up. A pause. Here it is, Seraphine said. It's not locked. No, it is, Cassian answered. Still needs her fingerprint. Then I felt it. Fingers curled around my wrist, light, careful. My hand was lifted slowly, then my thumb was pressed against the home button. Click, unlocked. My phone vibrated again, almost imperceptibly. Another signal. The screen had been accessed. The mic was still on. The evidence was collecting itself. She keeps everything under banking, Vera said, like she was discussing what aisle to find flour in. It's always been the same pattern. Cassian's voice was closer now. Routing number? Got it, Seraphine murmured. Only 8,000. That won't raise flags. 8,000. I'd paid off debt with less. I'd lived off less. And here they were, treating it like a safe withdrawal from a family fund they thought they deserved. Get her hand again, Vera said. We need to authorize the transfer. They lifted my thumb once more, used it for authentication. No passwords, no codes, just flesh and trust. Done, Seraphine whispered. She won't even know. She always blacks out anyway, Cassian added. She'll think she made the transfer herself. There was silence after that, a kind of shared exhale. Relief. That's when I realized. They'd done this before, and not just once. This was procedure to them, a strategy, a tool set refined through time. My heart was pounding, but my limbs stayed limp. I had trained myself for this moment. I felt a touch on my shoulder. You okay, honey? Vera's voice was back to soft concern, back to mother mode. I stirred slightly, let out a low sigh, then opened my eyes halfway. I think I blacked out for a sec, I said, my voice gravelly, barely above a whisper. Vera bent closer, brushing hair from my face. Oh, sweetheart, you probably just got dizzy. Low blood sugar, maybe. Yeah, I nodded slowly. Maybe that's it. Cassian handed me a glass of water. Seraphine hovered nearby, lips pursed in mock worry. I should go, I mumbled, starting to rise. They didn't protest. Of course they didn't, because as far as they knew, the job was done. I've got work early, I added, blinking like someone still disoriented. Let us walk you out, Vera offered. I waved it off. No need, just thank you. For dinner. Everything was memorable. They smiled, all of them. And for the first time that night, I realized something strange, something terrifying. They didn't feel bad. They didn't think they'd done anything wrong. This wasn't betrayal. It was just maintenance to them. Just a way to smooth over whatever imbalance they thought I'd caused by not doing enough, not giving enough. They'd rewritten the family code so often that they now believed stealing from me was something I owed them. At the door, Vera hugged me lightly, patting my back. Text us when you get home, all right? I nodded. Seraphine held me a second too long. Rest up, okay? She said. You're always pushing yourself. Cassian didn't say a word. Just gave a firm nod, then turned back toward the kitchen. I stepped outside into the evening chill. The driveway was dark, quiet. I walked to my car slowly, still feeling the residual hum of their hands on mine. Once inside, I started the engine, locked the doors, and stared straight ahead. I didn't drive off immediately. I waited. The phone buzzed again. Upload complete. The audio file was now in 3 secure cloud accounts, 1 USB backup hidden in my work drawer, and 1 email draft addressed to a trusted lawyer, ready to send with a single tap. My hands were steady now, my breath even. I whispered to myself, not because I needed reassurance, but because I wanted the moment to be marked. Now, let's see what silence sounds like when it's turned into evidence. The living room was still wrapped in quiet when I stepped inside my apartment. The streetlight outside cast a soft orange glow across the hardwood floor, and for a moment, I stood there in the doorway, keys dangling in my hand, still wrapped in everything that had just happened. I shut the door slowly, locked it twice, and let the silence settle around me like a second skin. I didn't turn on the lights. Instead, I walked to the kitchen, dropped my keys on the counter, and opened my laptop. It booted up faster than usual. Or maybe I was just impatient. I slid my phone from my coat pocket, plugged it in, and opened the Cloud app. The audio file was already there, time-stamped, crisp. I put in my earbuds, pressed play, and listened. Vera's voice came through first, hushed but clear. She always blacks out. Then Seraphine. We just need her thumb. She never remembers anything. Cassian. Only 8K. She'll think she transferred it herself. I paused the audio. Sat very still. The truth was one thing when you suspected it. It was something entirely different when you heard it played back to you in your own family's voices, like a true crime documentary, except you were both the subject and the producer. I felt hollow. Not because I was surprised, but because I wasn't. I had suspected this kind of betrayal for years, brushed it off, swallowed it down, tried to rewrite it in softer language. But hearing it now, cold, deliberate, like they were listing ingredients on a recipe card, it changed everything. I closed the audio file and opened my banking app next. I already knew what I was looking for. 2 years ago, Christmas Eve, I filtered transactions by date. There it was. Withdrawal, $2,000. Time, 11:41 p.m. Label, online transfer, verified by biometric. I stared at the screen, let the numbers burn into my eyes. I didn't make that transfer. I had blacked out that night after 1 drink, just like tonight. I had woken up in my old bedroom with a dead phone and no memory, and apparently with a lighter bank account. It wasn't a one-time mistake. It wasn't stress or fatigue. It was a system, a process, and I'd been trained to excuse it. I sat back in my chair, let the air move through me, cold and steady. After a moment, I reached for my second device, a tablet synced to the smart home camera at my parents' place. Another thing they forgot I still had access to. I logged in, pulled up the archive footage from tonight, skipped to 5:42 p.m., just before I arrived. The video showed Vera standing by the door, glancing over her shoulder, then her voice, faint but captured by the ring mic. If she asks, say it was just a family prank. That line broke something open in me, not because it was new, but because it was rehearsed. They already had a script for the fallout. They were ready to gaslight me before I even stepped inside. I closed the app, exhaled, then I got to work. Opened a clean spreadsheet. I titled it, Timeline of Incident, Mayella V. In one tab, I uploaded the audio. In another, the bank screenshots. In a third, the video file from the doorbell. I drafted an email. 3 recipients, Fraud Department, Brookstone Bank, Officer L. Carmichael, Weathersfield Police Department, Financial Crimes, PR@stratusreputation.com. Seraphine's firm. I didn't attach my name. I used a secondary address I'd registered months ago for emergencies. The subject line read, Unauthorized financial activity and biometric exploitation. Full evidence attached. I included every file, time-stamped, tagged, clear. Then I clicked send. No hesitation, no rage, no drama, just silence. Clean, surgical silence. The kind that didn't scream, but settled in deep and stayed. I left the laptop open and walked to the window. The breeze from outside cut through the quiet, crisp, and honest. My phone buzzed. Notifications. I didn't look right away. I waited. Then picked it up. Group text. Family first. Seraphine. Did you actually record us? Cassian. You're being irrational. Vera. This will ruin everything we've built. I blocked the thread. Individually, too. Each number. Each name. I would not respond. There would be no explanation. No, you misunderstood. No, it wasn't like that. No, let's talk. They had spoken enough. I had listened enough. And now, they would listen to silence. My email pinged. Your file has been successfully delivered. I looked down at the screen, then stepped back to the window, opened it wider. The air rushed in, cool and clear, as if the whole world had been holding its breath and was finally exhaling. I watched the wind move through the leaves outside, brushing over everything like a reset. I didn't destroy my family, I whispered. They did that themselves. I just handed them the mirror. It took less than 36 hours for the first wave to hit. The audio file I had quietly uploaded, clipped from the night of the dinner, was no longer mine alone. Now, it had a life of its own, bouncing across inboxes and server logs, making its way into meetings and behind closed doors. I had planned it that way. Quietly. Cleanly. I didn't need a courtroom. I needed exposure. Seraphine was in the middle of a morning debrief at her firm, Stratus Reputation Management, ironically, when it happened. They were halfway through reviewing a proposal for a high-profile tech CEO when someone pressed play on the file I had sent. Just get her thumb. That line played loud and sharp through the conference room's audio system. No warning, no context, just that sentence, followed by Cassian's gruff voice. She always blacks out. Phones lit up, laptops paused mid-slide. I imagined the sudden tension, the chairs shifting, the silence choking the air. Her boss, I'm told, didn't say much, just looked at her and said, "You should take the rest of the week off." She didn't finish the meeting. While that was happening, I was on the phone with my bank. I need to report biometric misuse, I said, calm and composed. The fraud specialist on the other end asked, "And you have documentation?" "Yes." Audio confirmation, timestamps, and transaction logs. Within an hour, I had submitted the forms, attached the files, and initiated the freezing of all accounts that had ever been linked to any family member's access. Joint savings from years ago, gone. Secondary login recovery paths, eliminated. I filed for a no-contact order under financial harassment. My lawyer helped expedite it. By that afternoon, I had also updated every layer of my digital footprint. New phone number, secure cloud backups, facial recognition only on devices, and a full freeze on my credit, just in case someone got clever and tried to open a line of credit under my name. The relief didn't come in a rush. It came slowly. That night, I slept. 8 full hours. No disturbances, no cold sweat, no nightmares of childhood dinners and warm smiles hiding sharp intentions. It was the first time in years that sleep felt like sleep. The consequences were not immediate for my family, but they began to grow roots. In town, people talked. That's how it goes in places like Wethersfield. Word got out, not details, but rumors with enough truth to make people uneasy. Vera's former students, now adults, many of them, whispered in staff lounges. Cassian stopped showing up at his favorite diner, where he used to sit near the front window and argue about politics with the same 2 guys every Tuesday. No more warm greetings from the waitress who always brought his coffee without asking. And Seraphine? Well, Stratus didn't fire her, but she was placed on indefinite administrative leave. A reputation manager with a reputation problem. I hadn't sent the files to ruin their lives. I sent them because I refused to let them continue ruining mine. That night, a string of texts came in before I blocked the numbers. Seraphine. You made it worse than it had to be. Vera, we're still your family. This could have been private. Cassian, we raised you. This is how you repay us? I responded only once, not to grovel, not to explain, to say exactly what they needed to hear and what I had waited too long to say. You drugged me. You used me. That's not family. That's criminal. Then I blocked them all. No second message, no call, no exception. In the days that followed, I avoided the grocery store near their side of town. I skipped the bookstore Vera used to volunteer at. I rerouted my commute so I wouldn't have to drive past the church where we used to do Sunday potlucks. But I didn't feel like I was hiding. I felt like I was choosing myself. That weekend, I stood outside a small building I had just signed for. A quiet space on Maple Street, formerly a law office, now empty, with good bones and a solid roof. My key slid easily into the lock. Inside, the walls were bare. The light smelled faintly of dust, but it had potential. The new sign was being installed that day. Reset, recovery for financial abuse survivors. The man on the ladder gave me a small wave as he drilled into the brick, the metal letters gleaming under the afternoon sun. I walked up the front steps, one slow foot at a time, not because I was tired, because I was grounding myself, claiming this space, every inch of it, not for revenge, for restoration. Inside, I ran my hand across the empty counter where someday women would sit and fill out forms for assistance, for guidance, for hope. I imagined community workshops, quiet therapy sessions, conversations over tea, a place for people like me, like I had been. I didn't need my family's apology. I needed this. A room with windows wide open, light flooding in, not locked bedrooms where phones died mysteriously. This was my beginning. No more shame, no more silence. No more pretending I didn't see what I saw, know what I knew. I wasn't running anymore. I was rebuilding. On my terms. The scent of fresh paint still lingered faintly in the air that Saturday morning as I unlocked the front door of Reset. The sign above the doorway had only gone up yesterday, the letters still glossy and new. Recovery for financial abuse survivors. It wasn't flashy, no ribbon-cutting ceremony, no press, just a quiet beginning, on my terms. Inside, the walls were calm shades of warm gray and soft green. The front desk, though modest, held a printed card with our mission. Silence kept them safe. Your voice will set you free. I stood in the entryway for a moment before flipping on the lights. Sunlight spilled in through the window panes, stretching long across the hardwood. It was peaceful, earned. The first volunteers arrived just after 9, a social worker named Kendra, a retired therapist named Elaine, a woman I met at the bank who'd once been forced to co-sign a credit line she never used. They unpacked pamphlets and set up folding chairs in the back room, talking softly with that kind of steady, practiced patience people only develop when they've lived through hard things. By mid-afternoon, I had already met 3 women who cried when they realized this wasn't a scam or a handout. It was real, a place built because someone believed them before hearing a word. I didn't tell them my whole story. I didn't need to. I had built this place for them. Later that evening, after the last volunteer left and the lights dimmed down to a glow, I returned to the small office tucked at the back of the building. It was the same room that used to be my childhood bedroom, now with bare walls and new flooring. The desk was simple. A single framed photo sat on it, an old one of me at 8 years old, sitting under a maple tree with a book in my lap. Beside the desk was a narrow shelf lined with reading material. I'd started adding books slowly, most of them donated. I reached into the bottom drawer of the file cabinet and pulled out a small cardboard box I hadn't opened since moving in. At the bottom, beneath a stack of old journals, I found a photo frame I had once shoved under my bed to forget. It was a childish drawing on crumpled paper, edges yellowed by time. 2 stick figures, me and Seraphine. We were holding hands, both smiling, with big hearts drawn above our heads. In red crayon, I had written, "Me and my best sister, forever." I stared at it longer than I expected. I didn't cry. I didn't hate her. I didn't forgive her either. I set the drawing upright on the shelf between 2 books. Not to honor her, not to erase what happened, But because that little girl who drew it once believed something so deeply, so earnestly, that I owed her the space to be seen. I didn't need to rewrite the past. I needed to face it. A few days later, a letter arrived at the center addressed in slanted handwriting I didn't recognize at first. No return address. Inside was a folded sheet of yellowed stationery, the kind people used to write with when letters mattered. Mayella, it began. I knew something was wrong the first time your mother did the same thing to me. I was younger then. I didn't have the language. I didn't have the nerve to call it what it was. But you did. I've watched from afar, always afraid to speak. But not anymore. You've done something bigger than confronting them. You've opened a door, and for that, I'm proud of you. It was signed simply, Aunt Ruth. I held the letter for a long time, not because it changed anything, but because it gave weight to the silence that had stretched across generations. She had never intervened before, never said a word, and now, decades later, she was telling the truth the way she could. It was enough. The next week, I prepared a stack of envelopes. Each contained a USB drive, no letter, no explanation, just the truth, the recordings, the screenshots, the dates, the voices. I sent them to every cousin, aunt, and uncle who had once praised Seraphine's ambition, who'd said I was too sensitive, or not family-oriented enough, or difficult. I didn't send it to shame them. I sent it because if anyone was still choosing to look away, they deserved to see what they were refusing to face. Most never replied. Some blocked me. But one cousin, a woman named Elise, who had stood beside Seraphine at her baby shower and once called me cold, texted me late one night. I believe you, she wrote. And I'm sorry. That was enough. Vera, Cassian, and Seraphine never reached out again. They disappeared from my life, not through some dramatic exit, but like furniture you quietly get rid of. No fanfare, just absence. They didn't apologize. They didn't ask to make amends. And that, too, was enough. Healing wasn't a clean arc. It didn't show up one day and say, "You're done." It crept in slowly, through small victories, through quiet moments like sitting in a room you'd reclaimed and realizing your breath didn't hitch every time you heard footsteps. I still had days where I didn't trust people's smiles. I still double-checked my bank notifications more often than I wanted to admit. But I was no longer waiting for permission to feel safe. I had built my own security. That evening, I stood by the front window of Reset as the sun began to set, golden light pouring across the floor like a promise. Outside, a woman stood nervously on the sidewalk, mid-40s, holding a tote bag like it was a shield. Her fingers were clenched tightly around the strap. I saw something in her eyes I recognized instantly. Fear and exhaustion woven into resolve. I opened the door. She stepped inside. I offered a smile that wasn't professional. It was personal. You're not alone anymore, I told her, voice steady. Let's begin again. Sometimes the hardest truths are the ones hidden behind family photos and polite smiles. Mayella's story is more than a revenge story. It's a reminder that silence can be deadly, and loyalty, when misplaced, can cost everything. Have you ever stayed quiet just to keep the peace, only to realize you were sacrificing yourself? Let me know in the comments. And if this story hit close to home, don't forget to subscribe for more real, raw stories just like this. Your voice matters here.